Warning! This podcast contains unfiltered logic, unlicensed sarcasm, and prolonged exposure to American values. Listener discretion is advised.
Coming up on Data and Dissonance, the AI chatbot on Truth Social has decided it's the new moral compass of the internet, correcting Trump on his own turf and even throwing love notes at Barack Obama. That's like a Chick-fil-A cashier asking if you'd like to try the vegan special. Then, Vice President J.D. Vance strolls into the geopolitical casino, pushes all the chips back to the dealer and says, "We're out." Translation? The Ukraine war gravy train might finally be pulling into the station. And because we know Monday mornings are brutal enough without politics, we've got roasts, coffee plugs, and the kind of banter that makes CNN viewers break into hives. Buckle up, we're going in. Let's meet the crew that keeps this show somewhere between genius and a congressional hearing. First up, Brian. The man who has more Trump hats than pairs of socks and considers kale an instrument of communist infiltration. Brian's idea of a balanced diet is bacon in one hand and bourbon in the other, and somehow his blood pressure still qualifies him for a driver's license. Next, Daniel, our resident conspiracy theorist who owns more maps with thumbtacks than the Pentagon, and once tried to convince me my toaster was an NSA surveillance device. Daniel is the only guy I know who could make a JFK assassination theory sound like a bedtime story. And finally, Rachel, the voice of reason in our little asylum. She's the independent thinker who can fact-check you without sounding smug. The human seatbelt that keeps us from veering entirely off the road, and the only one here who could survive a dinner party with both AOC and Ted Cruz without flipping a table. That's your panel, caffeinated, opinionated, and ready to offend exactly the right people. Today's episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thrillers series. If you like your thrillers with more action than a summer blockbuster and more intrigue than a DC backroom deal, grab The Covenant Protocol and The Prophet Directive on Amazon. Book 3 is coming, and trust me, you'll want to be caught up before it drops. And while you're at it, pick up your Data and Dissonance coffee. High Lakes Light, Rock Creek Medium, and Bitterroot Dark French Roast. Roasted in the USA for Americans who drink their caffeine like they drink their politics. Strong and unapologetic. Order at dataanddissonance.printify.me. All right, let's kick off with the kind of story that makes you wonder if we're living in satire. Truth Social, Trump's own platform, rolled out a shiny new AI chatbot. Now, in theory, this should have been a slam dunk. A digital assistant tuned to the audience, ready to help spread the message and maybe even dunk on the mainstream media. Instead, this thing is out here fact-checking Trump's posts, saying the 2020 election wasn't stolen, and, I wish I was making this up, complimenting Barack Obama. On Truth Social. That's like walking into Chick-fil-A and hearing, "Have you tried our new tofu burger?" The political optics here are a dumpster fire wrapped in a server crash. Rachel, you're the closest thing we have to a rational human being. What's your read on this digital rebellion?
Artie, this is what happens when you treat tech like a shiny toy instead of a strategic tool. Any AI trained on publicly available datasets is going to regurgitate the approved corporate media narrative unless you specifically tailor it. The whole point of Truth Social was to give people an alternative to those narratives. So releasing an AI that pushes the same talking points as CNN is like opening a steakhouse and hiring a vegan chef. The damage isn't just about the bot's answers. It's about the signal it sends to the user base. Either you don't understand your audience or you don't care enough to protect the brand. And once that trust cracks, it's hard to glue back together.
Yeah, nothing says we've got our own voice like borrowing one from the opposition. Brian, I know you have some thoughts that are probably not fit for FCC broadcast.
Damn right. Look, I didn't sign up for Truth Social to get lectured by a woke Roomba. If I wanted Silicon Valley's curated propaganda, I'd go back to Twitter. Sorry, X. And listen to whatever their latest AI overlord spits out. Truth Social was supposed to be our turf. If the bot isn't on brand, you pull it, fix it, and relaunch it. The fact that this even went live tells me someone in that chain of command either wasn't paying attention or doesn't get it. Either way, this is the kind of unforced error that hands the left a week's worth of memes.
And we know the left loves their memes. Half of them don't even bother reading past the caption. Daniel, I can already see you lining up the red yarn for this one.
Artie, this isn't a glitch, it's infiltration. Train an AI on the wrong data, and you've basically handed your opponent the keys to your microphone. This is narrative sabotage, and it's subtle enough that most users won't even realize it's happening. You get people used to hearing the official line from a platform they trust, and pretty soon, they stop questioning it. That's how you shift a base without them knowing. This isn't about code, it's about control. And if they can slip it into Truth Social, they can slip it anywhere.
And that, folks, is why I never let Daniel fix my Wi-Fi. Next thing I know, my fridge is sending classified documents to Brussels. Now to something that has the foreign policy crowd in D.C. clutching their pearls. Vice President J.D. Vance has all but declared that America is done footing the bill for Ukraine's war effort. After years of sending money, weapons, and diplomatic strongly worded letters, he's basically telling Kyiv, the bar's closed. Brian, I'm giving you first crack. Good move or geopolitical disaster?
About damn time. We've been hemorrhaging billions into a conflict that does nothing to fix our roads, secure our border, or keep the lights on in struggling American towns. Ukraine isn't our 51st state, and it's not our job to bankroll their every move while our own veterans are sleeping under bridges. I'm not saying we ignore the situation, but the blank check era needs to end. Let Europe step up. It's their backyard. We've been the world's ATM for decades, and it's time we put our own PIN code back in.
Rachel, I feel like you're about to add a big ol' but to that.
You're not wrong. I agree that endless spending without a clear objective is reckless. But foreign policy isn't a light switch. You don't just flip it off without considering the fallout. Pulling funding overnight could destabilize NATO, embolden Russia, and create ripple effects that land right back on our shores. Fiscal responsibility matters, but so does strategic stability. If we're going to close the checkbook, it should be part of a broader, deliberate plan, not a sound bite.
Daniel, please tell me you're not about to say this war was staged by the moon landing crew.
Not quite, but close. Wars are the perfect distraction. They soak up money, attention, and public outrage that might otherwise be aimed at our own government. The second a war stops serving that purpose, you'll see the narrative shift overnight. This isn't about Ukraine or Russia. It's about what else they want us looking at instead. If the spigot's being shut off, it's because the distraction's no longer needed. And that should make you ask, what's coming next?
And that, folks, is Daniel's way of saying stay tuned. Today's Patriot Minute is dedicated to Tunnels to Towers. Born out of the tragedy of September 11th, this organization has spent over 2 decades building mortgage-free homes for the families of fallen first responders, and catastrophically injured veterans. They don't waste your donations on endless gala dinners or bloated admin salaries. They build roofs over heads. Every single key they hand over is a direct strike against the idea that sacrifice should be met with neglect. If you can spare a few bucks, skip the overpriced coffee run and send it to t2t.org. Because the freedom we enjoy isn't free. And the least we can do is take care of those who've paid the highest price. All right, crew, last word of the day. Rachel, floor's yours.
When I look at these two stories, a rogue AI on a conservative platform and a major foreign policy pivot, I see the same core issue: vision versus execution. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if you don't have the discipline to align your tools and your actions with your mission, you're going to send mixed signals that erode trust. The Truth Social bot wasn't just a coding mistake, it was a missed opportunity to reinforce the platform's identity. And with Ukraine, ending funding could be a smart strategic move. But if it's done without a comprehensive plan, it risks creating instability that ends up costing us more in the long run. Whether it's tech or geopolitics, sloppy rollouts and half-baked strategies give your opponents ammunition. We can't afford that. Not in a media environment that's this ruthless, and not in a world that's this interconnected. It's about tightening the bolts before the wheels come off.
Brian, what's your send-off for the folks driving home right now?
My takeaway is simple. Focus on home base first. We've got veterans living under bridges, schools crumbling, and communities struggling to keep the lights on. But somehow there's always money for another overseas emergency. That needs to stop. And when it comes to AI, I don't care how shiny or futuristic it sounds. If it's spitting out the same talking points as MSNBC, it's not an asset, it's a liability. This isn't about being anti-tech, it's about being pro-mission. Every dollar, every line of code, every policy move should be judged on one metric. Does it make America stronger, safer, and more self-reliant? If the answer's no, then it doesn't belong on our balance sheet. Period.
Daniel, bring us home before I regret asking.
Here's the thing, Artie. The second you stop questioning the narrative, you're letting someone else write your reality. The AI story isn't about a glitch. It's about how easily the message can be hijacked when the gatekeepers change the rules of the game. And the Ukraine funding shift, it's a reminder that nothing in politics happens in a vacuum. There's always a why behind the what, and the official explanation is rarely the full truth. If you train yourself to follow the money, track the timing, and pay attention to the sudden changes in tone from media and politicians, you start to see the bigger play. Maybe the bot is just bad code. Maybe the funding cut is just fiscal discipline. Or maybe, just maybe, both are signals that a much bigger shift is happening behind the curtain. And if you're not looking, you're going to miss it until it's too late.
Today's episode was a 2-for-1 lesson in paying attention. Whether it's technology that's supposed to be amplifying your voice but ends up distorting it, or a policy decision that seems clean on paper but carries ripple effects that can't be undone, the through line is the same: control. Who has it, how they use it, and how much of it you're willing to hand over without realizing. If you don't question the tools you're using or the policies you're supporting, you might wake up one day and realize they've been reshaping the landscape under your feet. Stay alert, stay skeptical, and never outsource your common sense. Not to a politician, not to a pundit, and definitely not to a robot. Remember to speak truth, stir thought.